Uh, Welcome, everyone. My name is Tom Fleischner. I'm very pleased and honored to be the host here tonight. I am the Senior Advisor and Director Emeritus of the Natural History Institute, which is our host institution tonight. And the Institute is a mission-driven, independent nonprofit organization based in Prescott, Arizona. And that mission is to provide leadership and resources for revitalized practice of natural history that integrates art, science, and humanities to promote the health and well-being of humans and the rest of the natural world. And I think you'll see as we get into the program tonight that tonight's program aligns very, very nicely with the mission of the Natural History Institute. Just would say a couple of things, and I know we have an audience that's from all over, and that's wonderful. And although we're based in Arizona, our work takes place everywhere, and including lots of resources online. And so we welcome you, invite you to visit the Natural History Institute website, which is just naturalhistoryinstitute.org. Also, the Institute has a well-developed YouTube channel, which we invite you to check out and subscribe to. And of course, we always, as a small independent nonprofit, we welcome any kind of support you can offer to the work of the Institute as well. And mostly just wanted to say welcome to the Natural History Institute's extended community. A couple of things I wanted to say at the outset here about the way that this is going to work tonight and the sort of protocols for Zoom, which we're all at this point very experienced Zoomers. But as I've been saying, inviting people to say hello on the chat function, but momentarily here, that chat function is going to be disabled. But what's going to be live throughout the talk is the Q&A function. And we will welcome you and invite you to put down any comments or questions for our guests of honor through the Q&A function. And you can start doing that at any time. And we'll get to that a little bit later on in the program. Also want to say, and I'll mention this again at the end, but this program will be archived on the Institute's YouTube channel, and it'll actually be on there immediately after the program, but it'll be cleaned up just a little bit by tomorrow, midday or so. And if you know people that wish that they had been able to be here and couldn't be here, you can direct them there. So that said, enough sort of housekeeping. It's my really great pleasure to welcome our two special guests tonight, Richard Nevle and Steven Nightingale. Richard is the Deputy Director of the Earth Systems Program at Stanford University. He, among many other honors, he's been the recipient of Stanford's highest teaching award. Richard is a geologist by training with a lot of research on climate change in Greenland and so on, but his teaching has been much broader than that, integrating the sciences and the arts, especially writing. And he's also a board member of the Natural History section of the Ecological Society of America. And he's joining us tonight from Stanford University in California. Steven Nightingale, his education, undergraduate education, originally was focusing on physics. This was also at Stanford, by the way, and computer science, but somewhere along the line became entranced by poetry, and ultimately wove them all these disciplines together in a self-designed major at Stanford. He's the author of numerous books of poetry with a special interest in sonnets, the sonnet form, as well as fiction, both novels and short stories, and nonfiction as well. He does a lot of teaching of writing in the schools and has done that in both California and Nevada. He currently is based in and joins us tonight from his birthplace of Reno, Nevada, but he's has returned there after living in other parts of the world. He is a member of the Nevada Writers Hall of Fame, which includes, among other ne'er-do-wells, Mark Twain and others. So we're really, really happy to have both of you here tonight. And so Richard and Steven have both, throughout their professional lives and personal lives as well, have worked to integrate art and science, and that's a lot of that was what's going on in this book tonight, and on what we'll be discussing. And we're here to celebrate the release tomorrow, in just a few hours actually, is the official release time of their wonderful new book they've collaborated on, the Paradise Notebooks, released by Cornell University Press. And again, the title of our program tonight is Science and Poetry of the Sierra Nevada. And again, this integration of poetry and science aligns very, very nicely with the mission of the Natural History Institute. So first of all, gentlemen, congratulations on this beautiful book. It's so exciting to see it come out into the world, and we're excited to hear some snippets soon. So felicidades, wonderful work. And we're very happy to be part of the celebration here and the sort of launch of the book into the world. So I thought I would just quickly make a couple comments about the book, and then we're gonna, I'll stop babbling and we'll turn it over and hear more from Stephen and Richard. The sort of framing device, you might say, in the book is that, or it's based on a backpacking trip across the Sierra Nevada of Stephen's and Richard's with their families. And it is structured in such a way that it's 21 paired pieces of writing, both prose and poetry. So really the book represents a conversation back and forth between the two authors. And if I could make an editorial comment or two, because I wanted to sort of brag on the book a little bit in a way that probably Stephen and Richard might not be comfortable doing themselves. But I was just thinking about the book this afternoon, and I was out actually in the field and doing natural history. So I was thinking in terms of field marks, and I was thinking about field marks of this book. Four things came to mind. One is that it's collaborative, as has already been made clear. But if any of you have ever tried, it's hard enough to write something yourself, and to do that with another person is a great sort of Herculean task, and takes a whole different skill set in many ways. It is integrative, as we also have already said. It is passionate and driven by a lot of feeling, and it's also intelligent. And of course, passion and intelligence are two very, very strong things, but they don't necessarily always go hand in hand. So collaborative, integrative, passionate, and intelligent. And again, congratulations, both of you. And so anything else that either of you would like to add just about the structure of the book, how it's put together, how anything like that? And then we'd like to hear sort of maybe a few words about the genesis of the book, how this came into the world.
I might just add a couple of other elements, Tom. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting us here tonight, and for all the inspiration that you provided through your own work, which I think there's a direct line of descent in many ways from the work of the Natural History Institute and what we aspired to achieve through this book. And I would say that other dimensions of this book, you don't typically think of illustrations as always the soul of the book, but I think there's a way in which the illustrations provide a kind of interpretation and a way of making accessible some of the features and the relationships that we describe in the book. And those were done by Matthias Lanus, who is a dear friend and a wonderful natural historian and illustrator. And there are also vignettes from our trip, essentially cribbed straight from the journals that we kept along the trails that flavor the book as well. And I would say, Steve, maybe you would like to say something about the intentional way in which we are bringing together a whole-minded approach through what we're doing.
Sure. I think this is a book that grew out of a friendship, out of a long and really rather daft and hazardous hike. And as part of that hike, we began talking to one another about the various books we had read on the Sierra and in other natural areas. And they tended to fall in two categories. One is the category of science, whereby there is a description of various life forms and an attempt to portray how they all work together. And the other is a more worshipful and lyrical approach to some natural area. And so what Richard and I evolved in conversation as we were hallucinating from fatigue on the trail is to create two very distinct lenses. One, a lens of factual and detailed but lyrical science, and the other a lens that would look at whatever element that Richard, as a scientist, had described through in the context of the history of poetry and spiritual writing. So you have two very different approaches, and I came to think of them as a kind of very specialized and exotic pair of binoculars. That is, you focus these two different lenses upon any element of the Sierra, whether it's snow or rivers or a chickadee. And by means of seeing that element simultaneously through both those lenses, it was Richard's and my hope that the reader, as well as we ourselves, could see it whole, could see it more truly, could see it more completely, in a way that would bring it home. And we came to realize that we had not ourselves read a book like that, so why not write one?
Okay, well, we're glad you did. So just wanted to burrow a little bit more into that, how the book came about and how the book emerged from the hike. So what you and I'm sure everyone's really interested to hear this. So you're saying that you went on the hike, because a lot of people go on a big hike, but there's not usually a book that comes out of that. So the idea for the book emerged from the very process of being immersed in the hike. Is that accurate? It's not like you didn't plan to go out on a hike that was going to result in a book.
Oh, no. Yeah, if I could just follow up on that. We certainly did not plan. It was in fact dreamed up as we were striding along a few days after climbing that ice chute after the pass on crampons. I think one of the reasons that we conceived this is because the hike itself was transformative. And when that occurs, what you want is you feel like you've been invited into the gift of a place. And nothing is more natural in the world than wanting to share that as completely as you can. Every gift, such gift is meant to be given away, and was our hope.
Fabulous.
Yeah, I think there's also a way in which the kinds of conversations and the power of the friendship in that place was so animating and wonderful that I didn't want it to end. And the process of writing a book, and that's sort of a foolhardy thing to propose, is like, hey, let's write a book together, Stephen. Stephen, so you can always end up like with a knife fight in a phone booth and that kind of endeavor. But we did the opposite. And it was a way of continuing that conversation in an even deeper way. And our friendship grew as a result of it. So it was born in friendship, and it blossomed in friendship.
Fabulous. That's wonderful. Okay, well, without further ado, how about we hear a little passage, a pair of passages from the book. And before we do that, I just wanted to remind folks again that we encourage you to use the Q&A function here on Zoom, which is on the bottom right on your screen. And if something passage strikes a question, or if something either of these guys has said brings a question, or if there's just a comment you want to make, and I would say if there's a phrase or a word or something that resonates especially for you, just feel free to pop that into the screen too. as a form of sort of having dialogue with the authors here. So I am going to remove myself from the screen temporarily, and we look forward to hearing the first set of passages. And so everyone knows, we'll have another pair of readings a little bit later on in the program as well. Okay.
So I'm going to read a brief excerpt from one of the pairs of essays. And as Steve mentioned, we chose 21 elements of the Sierra Nevada to write about. And the first section of the book is entitled Stone, Water, Fire. And these excerpts are from our chapter on rivers, and the chapter is titled River. The Sierra Nevada is an immense curving spine of rock winding 400 miles down the length of California. A profile cut across the range reveals a ramp. It edges up from California's Central Valley to the mountain's frost-riven crest, then plummets down a steep escarpment to the sage-brushed scrubland of the Great Basin. Yet such geometric description of the range is only abstraction, for the Sierra Nevada is alive, sheathed in a skin of soil and forests, veined with green canyons, holding cold rivers in indigo shadows. Rivers have sawn down through the mountains, cutting to the quick of the range's granitic interior, drawing the mountains down in an unending litany of clattering cobbles, tumbling sand, gritty silt, and dust. Rivers have ferried all matter of fragmented stone to the yawning Central Valley, on to the muddy bay of San Francisco, and into the dark, dreaming chasm of the Pacific Ocean. Before California was California, some 100 million years ago, the primeval forebearer of the Pacific Ocean lapped against what is today the Sierra Nevada's western edge. Into this shallow sea, ancestral rivers unloaded their hauls of Sierran rock in such quantity that the sea floor sagged and sank under the accumulating weight. Remnants of the river-ferried and ocean-sifted sediments are stacked between the Sierra and the coast ranges in a bulging wedge of rock up to 6 miles thick. The volume of it might fill the Grand Canyon 25 times over. Yet still this mass says nothing of the Sierra's remains that were gouged out by rivers, dumped into the ancestral Pacific, and then dragged down into the Earth's incandescent interior along the conveyor belt of subduction, the engine that drives the slow process of tectonic churning by which the planet consumes its rocky skin, regenerates the contours of its surface, closes and opens its ocean basins, and draws its land masses together to build continents, only to divide them later from within, which is to say that most of the Sierra has gone down the river.
Oh, so this is my companion piece to Richard's, that excerpt from Richard's wonderful essay. We began our hike knowing that it had been a big winter and that the massive snowdrifts in the mountains had turned rivulets into rocketing creeks and rivers into threatening torrents. Before we began hiking, we knew that already 3 hikers had drowned in a kern. Our route had many watercourses that we meant to walk across. Now a coursing and a tossing of fresh currents confronted us at every instance, and we had to reconnoiter up canyon and down canyon to find a way forward. It carried the terror of knowing, in crossing, the precise number of mistakes allowed. 1, and 1 only. My balance is poor. More than once I crawled slowly like a clumsy lizard over tree trunks. Our daughters, though, leapt up easily upon the same trunks and walked straight across with insouciance and exquisite balance, for all the world as if on a Sunday promenade. The combination was unforgettable, unbearable beauty in the presence of death. Emily Dickinson wrote, "Those that are worthy of life are of miracle. For life is a miracle, and death harmless as a bee, except to those who run. We did not run. We tried to learn. What stayed with us was the power of water and its movement, which is irresistible, mountain making, and on the move with the force of revelation. As rivers shape the material of the Sierra, so does the arcing and concentrated movement of our ideas, actions, and spirit shape our days and our months. It is as if a river is a teacher. And what it teaches is to follow a course forward based on a river's ancient recommendations. A suppleness of mind, a communion with land, a certainty of joy, an openness to light, and a surety of destination.
Thank you so much.
So you can see why it was so fun to work with Steve. This is the stuff I get to read all the time.
Well, it's so wonderful to hear it come to life, and I've had the privilege of reading it beforehand, but to hear it alive and aloud is wonderful. And for those in our audience who are hearing it, being exposed to it for the first time, this is very exciting and beautiful. So as those readings make very clear that I think of this book in many ways as a sort of an intertwined love letter to this place. And I'm just wondering if you could each tell us a little bit about sort of the arc of your own love affair with this place. Like how did this become such a special place in your lives, and why the book here, and why was this the place that you were drawn to have this wonderful experience with your families? And by the way, let's hear it for daughters. That's okay. And so just maybe just a little bit about your own relationships with the Sierra Nevada.
Maybe I should begin.
Don't be shy.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So my first meeting with the Sierra Nevada was on the way to California from Massachusetts after college, and driving out with my girlfriend, who later became my wife and the daughter of her child. And it was that encounter which I first met the granitic rocks of the Sierra Nevada, which I'd studied as an undergraduate in geology, and I was there making contact with for them for the first time. That place, the Sierra Nevada, became a source of spiritual strength and respite throughout my time in graduate school. Every summer, my wife and I would go up to the Sierra Nevada to camp and to backpack. And then when our daughter was born, we took her every single summer, first to go car camping when she was an infant, and then ultimately backpacking. And so there was a way in which that place became a kind of family member, almost like the sense of a grandparent, a place you go back and pay homage and honor and learn from every year. And then I would say that the relationship developed further starting around 2013. I think we have one of the folks who introduced me to celebrating the Sierra and understanding the Sierra in a different way. And those are the ranger naturalists of Tuolumne Meadows, who helped me to understand how I could bring my own vision as a scientist and incorporate it with the arts, and help me to appreciate the Sierra Nevada and communicate the power and the beauty and the mystery of the Sierra Nevada in a more meaningful way to my students. And it was really an invitation to bring to life the impulses that I already felt within me, is to marry the arts and the sciences as a way of communicating the beauty and the specialness of this place. And so I remain deeply grateful for how they opened my eyes and my heart to understanding this place in a different way. And Tom, some of those people are your former students, so my hat is off to you for helping to train them. So that's a little piece of that relationship.
Wonderful.
Uh,
Thank you.
Interestingly, my own encounter with the Sierra came from a completely different place. That is, though I lived in Nevada and California, I almost never hiked in the Sierra. I was a specialist in desert hiking. I love the desert. I loved it then. I still love it. I like the concentration, the light, the silence, the intensity, the austerity, the power, the spareness, and then more than 20 years ago, I met Lucy, who was a devoted Sierra hiker, as was her father, Bob Blake, who has gone off to the next world and is hiking the Sierra Nevada that he has found, I'm sure, in the Milky Way somewhere. Bob Blake, Lucy's father, went over his first pass in the Sierra, Paiute Pass, at age 7. And in the course of hiking there, probably over 50 years, I would say he memorized the High Sierra. He had the image of it in his head. And so we did Sierra hikes with him. We went to 12,000 feet in the High Sierra when Bob was 80 years old and our daughter Gabriella was 1, which was another daft enterprise, to point out. So I came late to the Sierra, but we did many hikes there. And to me, it was a wholly new experience. It had things that I was wholly unused to. For example, water. That was a brand new phenomenon to me. And so I love the fact that I was being invited into this whole new range of experience. And it felt to me like it was literally on a different planet, if not in a different part of the cosmos. It was so inescapably and extraordinarily different from everything I'd been used to as a hiker. So 2 very different approaches that Richard and I have to this one area that we both love.
It's really interesting because you, of course, grew up literally in the shadow of the range, and yet just only discovered it later on. It's interesting. It strikes me that, I of course live in the desert Southwest, but I used to live in the Pacific Northwest and spent a lot, was immersed in glacier-clad mountains up there. And I used to find when I would travel between the two, the Sierra Nevada to me were sort of like the perfect balance between the two in many ways, because they sort of had the openness of the desert up high in a way that the mountains of the Pacific Northwest didn't. So I think they were especially mountains that a desert lover, it's easy to love. Obviously they're easy to love for all sorts of people. So thank you for those stories. I guess I would make the comment that I think this book is going to prove to be a critical new addition to the already extensive literature of the Sierra Nevada. It's of course a much loved place and a much written about place, but I believe this book is going to be durable in that literature. But I wanted to ask you both to comment on, because I know part of your motivation is not just to write about the glory of the Sierra, but also to model, if you will, a way of connecting with any place. That this is a particular place that you love, but so I just wondered if you could comment on how do you think this book might be relevant to a reader who might never have seen the Sierra or never will see the Sierra, but still would find what would they find a value in this book from your perspectives? If that makes sense, if that question makes sense.
Yeah, I think there's two points I would mention to bring to bear on to answer this question. I think the first is, to your point of modeling, I don't even think of it as modeling, but the way that a place calls us to attention. It's relatively easy to be called to attention in a place in a big wild like the Sierra Nevada, in which the for first of all, the Sierra Nevada is an epically biodiverse range. You see such biodiversity from the oak savannas up into the conifer forests, up into the fell fields and the mountaintops. There's just a lot of different habitats and variation in habitats over a small area. And so there's not just the geological grandeur and the weather phenomena, but just such biodiversity, which awakens curiosity and calls us to pay attention. And it's as though it is a place in which the earth invites us to pay attention. And it's a kind of attention that when we begin to practice it in a big wild place like the Sierra Nevada, it's something that we can take with us anywhere. It's something that we can bring. I live in a very urban environment in downtown San Jose, and the lessons that I've learned in the Sierra Nevada have not been lost on me in the urban environment. I think I enjoy birding and botanizing in an urban environment far more than I used to just through my attentive study of the Sierra Nevada. As a result of the pandemic, I was confined at home, working at home. Looking out my living room window, I was answering emails and noticing warblers I had never seen before in my backyard because I had learned a different way of paying attention. So the Sierra Nevada taught me that. I would say the second thing, and I'm going to just maybe mention this and hand it off to Steven, but this is a book about healing in many ways. It's about healing our broken relationship with the earth, but it's a way about healing the arbitrary divisions that we impose upon ways of knowing. And I want to let Steven elaborate on that on second point and other points that he may want to bring to this.
Well, I think just to follow on that, we are concerned, both of us and many other people are as well, with what we take to be a kind of fragmentation of mind. And beauty is always and everywhere. And this is really true, I think, cross-culturally. Beauty is about unity. And to have unity, you need to break down the barriers between our minds and the workings of the natural world. You have to endeavor to see how the workings of the mind, in fact, are an essential and necessary and natural part of how a mountain range works, or how a river runs, or the life of a particular and beautiful bird there. And that healing and that unity, of course, are connected up with beauty. I have a definition of beauty in one of my essays, which is that beauty is a lucid and graceful assembly of forms that calls the mind close to life, our bodies close to nature, and all of us closer to one another. And that is the way the beauty of the Sierra affected us on this hike. And to that kind of relation with the beauty of the place, it involves a kind of yielding of oneself, a kind of vanishing into a place. And that is, to use Richard's words, that is the development of a capacity of mind, almost a capacity of soul. There's a beautiful line from mysticism, which runs, wisdom is being dead to self and alive to truth. And being in that passionate and intelligible relation to the natural world is just that kind of vanishing. It's a yielding of self. And as Richard pointed out, once you do that in a place, you can do it anywhere. I mean, I'm sitting here and there's 2 lesser goldfinches eating seeds outside my window. And I can see that they are perfect and they are exquisite and they are complete in ways that I don't think I could have seen before we came to write this book together.
Fantastic. So um, in a way, the practice of being in the Sierra, and the practice of all the labor that you put into putting the book together is a practice uh, uh, of remembering how to love the world. And I think, I was going to say to learn to love, but I think, of course, we all already know how to love, but it takes practice, just as it does with our human people that we care about. We have to keep practicing and learning how to do it, and then we get better and better at it. And so the Sierra is a wonderful place that, as you both eloquently just said, we can reflect that back, and then it refracts off into other, wherever we find ourselves. So yeah. And so in that way, then readers who may never ever see Tuolumne Meadows or any other glorious places in the Sierra would still find the book would be still enlightening and encouraging, because of how it does that for us, and as they seek to do that and wherever we are.
Yeah, if I could just
Yeah.
maybe add one more point to that, Tom, and thank you
Yeah.
for mentioning that there's a way in which, one of the things that the Sierra is a place that has filled me up with a kind of generosity of, or I wanted so passionately to share this place with people. I've taken many students there over the years. As I mentioned, my wife and I have taken our daughter up to this place every year since she was an infant. There's a way in which this place gives us something. It gives us a kind of opportunity to heal, to be whole, to be fully alive and human in the world in the most deep and profound way I can imagine. But as you point out, not everyone can access these kinds of places, and this is an attempt to use language to provide that kind of access, at least a thin sliver of that access, through creating or trying to conjure on the page the experience of what it feels like to be in this place. And that was one goal for the writing. I know my mom is listening, and I've gone to Tuolumne Meadows with her, but I don't know, when we'll be able to get up there again. And it's sort of a love letter, not just to the Sierra Nevada, but to all the people in my extended family and my students who I've taken there, to say this is a place that we remember, and we can go there again through this book. I always go there in my mind in troubled times, and so this book is a gift in that way too, is offering access to that place.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
And go ahead.
it's very, and it's such a natural initiative. It's natural to all of us. All the world has a come hither look, and we are here to answer that invitation. And that's one way of putting what we tried to do.
Yeah. And that's the practice of natural history, is that practice of that attentiveness that you are all exemplifying in this book, with both head and heart. Why don't we, I have a couple other questions, but I think it might be nice to hear another couple passages. And again, before I do that, we're starting to get a few comments and questions in the Q&A, which is great. And again, invite you all to not miss this opportunity to address your comments or questions directly to the authors of the book. And again, so go ahead at any time and add your comment or question using the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. And also just want to mention again that the book is the Paradise Notebooks, and it is released in a few hours tomorrow morning from Cornell University Press. So we encourage everybody to scramble to their local independent bookstore and find a copy. Okay, so again, I'm gonna zero myself out here, and we look forward to another couple passages.
So Steve and I are going to read excerpts from our very last chapter of the book. So in terms of the book's construction, we start with the elements related to stone, fire, water, and then and thinking about diminishing from the scale, a grand scale, down to the most minute scale. And so we start with granite and we end with wolf lichen. And I'm going to read a short excerpt from my essay on wolf lichen, and then I'll pass the torch on to Steve for his essay. In the heart of the Sierra's red fir forest, wolf lichen clings to the old boles like thick fur, intensely chartreuse, almost incandescent. Used variably to kill, to heal, and to bestow beauty, wolf lichen lives for itself and brews poison for its protection. Though it cannot defend itself against toxins we emit into our air, it still sends a quiet warning. Wolf lichen anchors firmly to the bark of mature firs, yet for most everything else, the lichen relies on itself. Or better said, the lichen relies on themselves. For lichens are a partnership of organisms, a fungus and a photosynthetic consort, a collaboration, really, that fashions a communal being with a life more wondrous than either could achieve alone. The photosynthetic partner, either a cyanobacterium or an alga as it is in wolf lichen, produces food using sunlight. And for its part, the fungal partner builds the lichen structure and harvests moisture and nutrients from rain and mist and air. A third co-conspirator in some lichen communes is yeast, a kind of microscopic fungi. Lichens are monitors and messengers. As they capture nutrients from the atmosphere, they do so indiscriminately, absorbing whatever airborne pollutants happen to fall upon them too. Sierra wolf lichens are bathed in a slew of wind-blown pesticides and pollutants produced by the incessant burning of fossil fuels. The lichens have tolerated these poisons so far. Their hardy persistence has enabled them to accumulate contaminants and thereby preserve records of pollutant deposition in Sierran forests, even as less pollution-tolerant relatives of the wolf lichen have likely declined in the range. What is the forest? It's a web of relations, of light and trees and soil, of flying, crawling creatures, of fungal mycelia, and of clinging bodies of brilliantly hued lichen. The Sierra forest, every forest, is a kind of music, really, an improbable orchestral emergence, a song of life. When the strands in the web of forest relations stretch and break, the song diminishes. The world could fall silent. Might we at least attend to the warning that is whispered by wolf lichen, this bright companion with whom we cling to earth?
We all need somewhere to live on Earth. We need a place where we can learn together. Our support is the simple, necessary one. Just as the wolf lichen relies on the bark of the fir for support, we rely on the physical world. Whether in the mountains, on the plains, or along a coast, we have as our holdfast the earth itself. We must answer the same question: how might we, in this very place, mindfully configure a life? How do we learn? What activity or contemplation would give us the best chance to live, to give, to understand? What if just now, rather than turn to volumes of philosophy, studies of psychology, or spiritual texts, we give our attention to the wolf lichen? First, we can learn that we are not, as it were, ourselves. Just as the lichen is composed of cyanobacterial alga and a fungus with the addition of a yeast, we ourselves are composed of a host of life forms. A considerable portion of our body weight, as much as 10%, is composed of bacteria. Our cell structure incorporates richly and remarkably the whole biological history of coordination and cooperation. We have the most intimate and powerful bonds always and everywhere with all other life forms. We live in them just as they live in us. Wolf Lichen offer this injunction: know how you are composed. Then take the next step and come to understand that none of us is alone. It is a physical fact that in the makeup of our bodies and at the root of the mind, we are unified with all other life. Where might this fact lead us? It leads us to the mischievous contemplation of all the other life forms we come across, whether in the Sierra or elsewhere. Here are some haiku, because who could help themselves at this moment? They would feel compelled to write haiku. Here are some haiku in celebration of some of the life forms that are a part of your life and all our lives. Oh, falcon, my fingertips on your wings. Cougar, at last in the afternoon, we nap together. Hornets, may I wear your nest as a turban? Coyotes, count me in, we'll caper through debutante balls. Bobcat, trust me, I pray, to babysit the kittens. Bat, take me with you for psychedelic acrobatics. Dragonfly, those colors, are you professor of opals? Moth, your wings unlock every one of the doors of midnight. Water ouzel, gray, small, plain, shy, packed with gods. Owl, fierce, vigilant, predatory. It's about joy. Meadowlark, without your song, spring would stay home and sulk. Hummingbird, sewing together the mind we need. Oh, what fun.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, I think a couple themes are nice, really nicely exemplified in that pairing there. One is the conversational nature of the book, and sort of almost call and response, you might say, of insight and eloquence, and also the sort of recurring theme of unity and this hike as a process of unification with the larger world and with one another. So that's beautiful. We're getting a number of questions and comments here, which I'm going to turn to just momentarily. Again, we invite you to add to that list if you're so inclined. Just one quick question that I had is, I'm just curious if y'all, having written this book, and now that the book is launching into the world, sharing the book and getting responses from the book, how do you think your next hike in the Sierra, will it be different in some way because of that? Like, will you perceive the place in a different way? Is the actual process of writing the book altering in some fashion your relationship? Would you anticipate?
Richard, do you want to take a crack at that?
I'm still thinking about it, Stephen. Why don't you start here?
Okay. I think that in as much as this book was meant very deliberately to develop a capacity of mind, that I expect not just the hikes in the Sierra, but even a walk here in my own neighborhood in Reno. I fully expect, and in fact have already experienced that there is a different note. It's like a different musical note in the quality of my experience.
Mhm.
In my own writing, I have tried to unify the transcendental and the practical, the sense and spirit. But Richard and I, at length, about a legendary mountain range, have taken on that same initiative, and so it's it makes more real and more full and more energetic kind of natural engagement with the world that I have always sought for in my own experience and in my own work. So I feel so grateful to Richard, and I feel so grateful to the Sierra Nevada for offering us that 90-mile long come hither look.
You know, there was a way in which this book was brought forth by the world. It was almost it was inevitable in a certain way for me to. Steve was a bit cagey when I tried to engage him in writing about this book, and he was a little skeptical. Steve, you know, in the sciences, so much of the work we do is profoundly collaborative. You'll see, you know, all my papers have multiple authors on them. I've never written a paper by myself. Like, that's just not the way we do it. And it's very different in literature. And you know, I needed to write this book, as you say, Tom, as a love letter, because I would have exploded had I not do it. It needed to be. There's some things that needed to be said, that the Sierra had called forth. There's a way in which that place fills one up with such profound love and feeling and sense of being alive in the world, that I needed to write it. And it was also, you know, I think it's a kind of prayer for the future. That, you know, I think the book feels like it's a spiritual book. It feels like there's something psalm-like about this attempt. And I wanted to write it as a love letter that I would hope might awaken that feeling in others, that work that we could do together to bring these different perspectives, to awaken a deep aspect of who we are, but we forget because of the busyness of our lives, because of the remove from nature through technology, because of the demands of how we live. And my hope is that this prayer was a prayer to bring us back and to heal that wound that has separated us from the natural world. And so I don't know what it's going to be like, having written this book and having it just come out, how it's going to feel different, other than it will be the next time I walk into Almy Meadows, I know I'll just be filled with this tremendous gratitude for the gift this place has continued to give me. So I'm not sure. It's going to be different, but I don't know how yet. I won't know till I'm there.
I'm confident it's going to be good. Just what sort of good? Well, I mean, we haven't actually used these exact words, but it's clear that some of the firmament of the book is gratitude and reciprocity as practices and as intentions, and which is, of course, so much of what the world needs right now. So I have gratitude to you, the two of you, for pulling this together as a example for the world of how to do that. We're running, getting a little bit short of time, so I do want to turn to the questions and comments that people have been putting in. And again, it's not too late to add something to the pile if you're so inclined. So The first comment was, if you recall back towards the beginning, I told people if there was a particular word or phrase that struck them, to feel free to put that in the comments as well, to be reflected back to you. So the first comment was that I love the phrase and idea of, quote, being invited into the gift of a place, which you mentioned, Stephen, in your opening comments. Mark Perotti, and I apologize if I
Mark Perotti. Hello, Mark. Thank you for being here. Mark is my old boss back in from my high school teaching days before I came back to Stanford.
All right, great. He says, you both guarantee that one cannot look at nature the same after reading this. Is this experience so unique and personable you wouldn't have plans to visit other compelling places and capture the experience for us?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think that this book could have been written about the desert landscape, about the tropical landscape, about a lagoon in Baja California. It could be written about a host of different places. And many of those places, it would be less life-threatening to hike it.
So we can anticipate the Paradise Notebooks 2, 3, 4.
Right, exactly.
Paradise Notebooks Baja.
we hope that our readers will not be alarmed to find this is the first of the series.
Right. A subscription, you can have subscriptions. Richard, anything you want to add to that?
Oh boy, I would love to have the opportunity to do more writing with Steven, but just time for writing. This book was stolen from snippets on the weekends. I have a pretty demanding job in my role at Stanford, and it does not necessarily provide time for this kind of work. And I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know if I'll ever get out of the rut of the Sierra. It's just pulled me back with such force. But there are many wild places in the American Southwest that I love. I love the Colorado Plateau. I love West Texas. I long to explore Baja California. These are all places that have been really pulling on me. I long to explore Central Mexico, which I have ancestral roots that go back. So there's a lot of places so who knows what the next chapter will be. But yeah, thank you so much, Mark. It's lovely. Thank you for the question, and thanks for being here.
And in the meantime, while you guys are working on the notebooks 2, 3, and 4, this work can inspire others to go out and write some of those stories as well. With this book as an inspiration. Okay, so we have a question, anonymous question. What do you think motivates most hikers to get out on the trail, any trail, but especially the iconic trails? And do you think those motivations stay the same over the ages?
Steve, would you begin to answer that, because you believe there may have been a nefarious motivation to get you on the trail?
Well, yeah, no. One of the things that Richard was referring to is that when I saw the route of this hike, I teased Lucy that she got it off a website entitled "How to Eliminate Your Older Husband." Listen, I think there are a myriad motivations, countless motivations, but my guess would be that common to many people is something that I referred to before. To be in a place so powerful, so unified, so beautiful, so extraordinary that you cannot help but yield yourself. You cannot help but give yourself up. And the exertion of the body, which is simultaneously a liberation of mind, helps in that process. You walk someplace like the Sierra Nevada or the Colorado Plateau or any beautiful natural place, and you can feel this yielding of the body and the it's a physical bond that forms between you and that place, and it makes the mind work in a different way. I dare say that's a fairly common experience with people who hike in wild places.
I think there's so many motivations. It's so personal. I'll just talk about my personal motivation for this kind of hiking. So I think there was a way in which the natural world may have saved my life when I was a little kid. Something transformed in me when I went to the Colorado Plateau for the first time. I was around maybe 5 years old. Something shifted inside of me, and I think it felt very important for my wife and I, as part of our daughter's education, for her to experience wild places. She grew up in a very urban environment, didn't have a lot of access to that. So it was an intentional part of our parenting to have her have exposure and opportunities for the healing power it might offer her, and for the many the kinship that she might develop with the earth. And I think there's a way in which doing this kind of walking together with families, and then to have the amazing good luck to find another family. Steve and I met, and Lucy and Deb met. We all met on our very first day at a school where our daughters were beginning the sixth grade together, and that was the beginning of this trip in some ways. And our daughters were 16 the year that we traveled across the Sierra Nevada, and we knew it might be our last chance to do it together, because we knew they might be busy with other things. It would be hard to plan this kind of trip. This is not something you get to do every day. For many people, this might be a once in a lifetime experience. But there's something about being there as a family and creating the kinds of memories that you do in a place that, in some ways, I think being in wild places has made my family who it is, and has made us better people and made us closer. And we have this language, this common language, that's deeply attached to the time in the Sierra Nevada. So many diverse personal motivations. One of mine is to be in place with people I love and to experience these places together.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, question. This is specifically for you, Richard, from Linny Wybazal. I apologize if I'm mangling your name. She says, your writing reminded me of Ruskin's mountain scenery, a combination of exact observation and imaginative exuberance. Just curious about your influences. John Muir, question mark?
I wouldn't say
about influences.
I wouldn't say it's imaginative exuberance. It's real exuberance. And John Muir was definitely a strong influence in my writing. When I first read John Muir, it was like being struck by a lightning bolt. I was so moved by his deep powers of observation and his capacity to use language to articulate a spiritual connection to the world. I mean, certainly there are those troublesome passages which we all know about, in which it's clear that Muir was not capable of extending some of that magnanimity to the indigenous peoples that he encountered in the Sierra Nevada. But for me, Muir is a complex character, and I continue to wrestle with my relationship with him as a person. But I remain ever grateful for what I've learned from him and for what I continue to learn from him. We're all complex, and this is something I try to negotiate with students sometimes, about how do we hold the full complexity of who we are as human beings in the world and all our imperfections. Muir, there's so many writers. This is what Steve and I enjoyed talking about on the trail. Annie Dillard, Terry Tempest Williams, Craig Childs. Oh my gosh, I love Craig Childs' writing. His work has really inspired me. And he's just got such exuberance and intelligence, and such a generosity of spirit, and his powers of observation, and his strengths as a storyteller, all things that I was really drawn to when I first encountered his writing. Not that I can do anything what Craig Childs does, but so many writers, I think writing poetry is, Gerard Manley, actually probably one of the biggest, most profound poetic influences when I was like maybe 14 or 15. I first read Gerard Manley Hopkins in my high school English class, and his language, his rhythm, the deep spiritual connection, the animacy or the animacy of the world that he was able to conjure through his writing, I think spoke to me deeply as a young person, and continues. Like, his rhythms stay with me. So that's just the tip of the iceberg. But those are the few people that come to mind. Stephen Nightingale, his sonnets. I have spent so much time just reveling in his sonnets, and the way that his precise command of vocabulary and the way that he uses words. I think one of the things I really look to writers is the way that they use words uniquely and the way they use certain words, and it becomes part of one of their field signs. So I really look for that. So many great writers. There's just not enough time for all the great writers in the world.
Daft, I've learned, is one of Stephen's field mark words. Stephen, anything you would like to add about influences as pertinent specifically to this book? Or
Oh gosh, Richard and Gerard Manley Hopkins, and my transformative writer was certainly Emily Dickinson. She's my hero. It's really as simple as that. So brave, so original, so bound up with her responsibilities to beauty and to this fabulous life-giving order that she saw in the world and within the world. To write those poems and to have them be a part of our heritage of language and the heritage of North America. She did us all the most extraordinary service. I cannot imagine the English language without Shakespeare or without Emily Dickinson.
Great. Thank you. Okay, well, our final two comments, they're both comments, and they're both about the cover of the book. The first from the artist, Phyllis Schaefer, says, hello, Stephen and Richard. This is Phyllis Schaefer, whose painting graces the cover of your wonderful book. I feel so honored to, in a very small way, to be part of this beautiful collaboration. I feel so aligned with your spirit and your words. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis.
Bless you, Phyllis. God, what a beautiful painting that is.
And then John Coopersmith adds, love the image on your book cover. Seems like a fitting compliment to your writing.
Perfect.
So we're just about out of time. So I just, again, want to remind everybody, the book is The Paradise Notebooks, out tomorrow from Cornell University Press, available everywhere, mañana, en la mañana. And again, it's been wonderful to be part of the celebration of the launch here. And so again, congratulations to Richard and Stephen for this wonderful book. Thank you for your work. And thank you for being here with us this evening. It's been wonderful.
Thank you for having us. Such a privilege to be able to be in conversation with you about all these beauties.
Yeah, thank you. And again, just remind the viewers that this program is been offered by the Natural History Institute. And if you'd like to learn more about the Institute's work, you can check out the website at naturalhistoryinstitute.org, and also check out the Natural History Institute YouTube channel, where there's all sorts of wonderful programs archived there, including this one, starting immediately, but a polished version tomorrow. And so again, thanks everybody for sharing part of your day with us here. And again, congratulations on the beautiful book.